some of those represent early work, some later works, maybe?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Like the little uh, raccoon was very early. The bobcat kitten was pretty recent. I've often had people ask me, "What's your message?" And I think my message is how precious our wildlife is, and um, how it's our responsibility to protect and maintain habitat so that the wildlife has a place to live. It's not, uh, we have eminent domain, but that doesn't mean to do as you please. That means it's a responsibility for you to protect and preserve. And I think that's kind of what I want my art to say is this is precious. This is so wonderful and unique, and how blessed we are to have these beautiful animals. And we need to take that responsibility seriously and protect. I think that's what hopefully will come across with my artwork.
Today is February 25th, 2025, and I'm in
Okay.
Judy Caldwell's shop, her studio, her enclave, her retreat center to talk. So, talk about your background in art and how you got started as a youngster.
Well, I was pretty darn young. I think I was about 5 or 6, when I first just started drawing. And I asked my mom one time to help me draw a horse because I was in love with horses way back then. And she tried to draw this horse, and I ended up going, "No, no, mom, that's not what they look like." And I drew a horse better than my mom drew the horse. And so she says, "Don't ask me to draw anything ever again." And then I took art all the way through my schooling, all the way through college. I started taking art classes outside of the public school probably when I was about 12. And bless my mom's heart, she took me to the Portland Art Museum for years to take art classes there, which was a huge education. Um, and then anytime classes were offered at somebody's home for painting or color theory or anything like that, I would go, and my mom would see that I got there. So I had a lot of support. Then I started college and took it in college with the intent of becoming an art teacher. Um, I never finished college, but I actually did end up teaching art from kindergarten to 8th grade for about 6 or 7 years. And then my kids came along and were needed mom, and I stayed home. But even then, I continued to take art classes, mostly flat work, a lot of drawing and painting. Um, it wasn't until our oldest daughter got her car that I finally took a wood sculpting class. It was offered at Clackamas Community College, and it was the worst class I've ever taken. The teacher was had no idea what he was talking about, but I got my hands on the wood, and that was it. The only flat work I do now is in preparation for carving. I don't do flat work anymore at all. I fell in love with the wood. I've done other kinds of sculpting. I've sculpted in stone. I've done some bronze casting, um, but none of it translates like I think the wood does. There's a certain warmth and depth to the wood. And so it became my medium.
And you were in your early 30s when the community college
Yes,
class happened. And
mid
what
30s. Yeah.
was it, a sculpture class?
Yes, it was a sculpture class. I took it 2 years in a row. Um, and that's where I actually ended up learning to cast in bronze, but I had to work the whole year and then cast in bronze at the very final term of that year. And I took it 2 years in a row so that I could really get proficient at it and understand the whole theory of the original and the mother mold and the spruing and the venting and actually using the crucible and pouring the bronze. And it was it was very interesting. And I did several pieces, probably 4 or 5 pieces that I had in galleries and sold, but it wasn't.
Were these carved sculptures?
No, I started off with clay,
Okay.
with the plasticine clay.
Okay. So, but where did wood enter this class, or was just
Oh no, this class was through a community college class.
Okay. So when did wood enter your life?
Oh, I'm guessing like the early 90s, early to mid 90s. I took this community class. It was wood sculpting. And my kids were independent enough that they didn't need mom at home all the time. And so I talked myself into it. I couldn't come up with an excuse not to, is basically what happened. And I took this class. And from then on, there was no bronze or no porcelain or no stone carving. It was just wood.
What did you sculpt? Do you remember?
Yes, I still have it. Poor, sad, pathetic little thing. We did a ruddy duck drake. And I had I had 2 rusty old rasps, and they were rusty. And my husband's Boy Scout carving kit. That's what I carved this poor, sad little bird. But it just fostered my love of the wood.
And somewhere along the line, the Western Wood Carvers Association.
Oh yes.
Was you got? How did you get involved? And what was how did that help you or hurt you? I guess.
While I was taking this class, the teacher recommended that I go up and see this show called Wild Birds in Wood, and it was held up at the Forestry Center, up by the zoo, Portland Zoo. And so I wandered up there, and it was just incredible. These birds were just, you swear you could see them breathing. And I walked around and finally got up the courage to talk to several people. One of them was a fellow by the name of Andy Anderson. And he just took me under his wing. He stopped what he was doing at his site, asked his neighbor to watch his stuff, and he took me around the whole show, introduced me to people, explained what the wood was, explained the tools that they used. And he became a mentor. And up until the time that he passed, he was influential to me and kept me going when I was going like, I don't know why I'm doing this.
And his name was?
Andy Anderson.
Andy Anderson.
Yep. Kind, very supportive. It taught me all the different kinds of wood and the different kinds of tools, talked me into taking some classes. And that's how I got it. He says, you've got to go to the Western Wood Carvers. And they met up at the Forestry Center. And we had something like 400 members. It was huge. We'd have 60 to 80 people come to the meetings. And they put on really, really good programs. And that's all she wrote. That's
on replay. Did it bring up new things you'd like to say, or did they?
Well, the only thing I can think of is another fellow who was instrumental in keeping me on the straight and narrow was Will Hayden. Andy was kind of the gentle soul who kept nudging me along, and Will was the drill sergeant who didn't allow me not to move forward. So those 2 men were very instrumental in getting me going, getting me established.
I'm going to make a statement. This is true, that in order to be successful, you are designer, you are a carver, and you're a painter.
Yes.
It takes all three of those.
Yes.
Someone might give you a design, in which case you could short circuit that. This is basically a question of, can mere humans carve a mammal if they don't do design,
Oh, sure.
right? So they could
But
get designs in
yes.
plenty of magazines and books and articles, right?
Yes.
Whether it's a bird or mammal.
And that's how I started.
Yeah.
I used other people's patterns to begin with,
Mhm.
but then it became very static, rigid, and I wanted to start to tell a story. So I try to put a little bit of action, attitude. I want people to think about what's going on there, what's happening there. And if they make up their own story and it isn't at all what I was thinking, I don't care. I want a story to go along with it. And a lot of the patterns are very, um, very rigid, static poses. So when that happened, then I started making my own patterns, and I found that to be very creative.
Most people will not have the painting background that you have.
I fortunately came into it with
Yeah.
painting in my.
So talk a bit about oil, acrylics, spray. What's the dimensions of the painting processes that you use, and what would be a good way for someone just getting started who might be carving a bunny or something?
I would tell them to take flat painting classes.
Flat painting classes?
Yes, I have not used oil on wood. There's a lot of artists who do and do beautiful work with it. I just have not. The teachers I've taken from all used acrylic. So that's how I learned. That doesn't mean that I won't. I just may very well, because there's a real nice ability to blend with the oils that you don't quite have with the acrylics. But all the teachers that I took from all painted with acrylics. So that's kind of what I've learned and where my comfort zone is. I'm by no means very experienced in the airbrush. Mostly what I use the airbrush for now is just laying in background color. And then I go to my brushes and paint that in. I paint almost 99% with washes. I don't use solid paint. I'll take, everybody will find their own favorite brand. Jasonia's is one that I use. Liquitex has some good colors, and they're finer ground pigments, so that when you make washes, the paint doesn't fall to the bottom. It stays mixed in with the water, and there's retarders and flow mediums and stuff like you can add to it, so you're not getting that acrylic that dries instantaneously. So I can't speak much on oils, and really not that much on airbrushing, because I just am not very experienced.
After the carving is done and before you put the first paint on, how do you prep the wood?
I use a product called TKs.
TK?
TK. Yeah. I'll get you out. But there's this is what I use. But you can use, there's some deft, like sanding sealers and stuff like that, and you can thin that down. I really like this. It soaks in nicely. It does not raise the grain at all. Put like 2 to 3 coats of that on. And
Do you
then
have to do anything between coats?
No. If it has raised some grain up. Because you go, uh-oh, I didn't really get that sanded very well, did I? I'll go back in with, like a 400, 600 grit and just sand it down lightly. But no, I really like that product a lot.
You putting primer on after that? What do you put on after?
I don't use gesso. Never have liked gesso. The only thing I've ever used gesso on is is a canvas. A lot of people use gesso and love it. They like to have that tooth. I use the Gersonia's either warm white or smoked pearl, or a combination of those two. And what you end up really is you end up with almost the exact same color that the wood is. The wood, the Tupelo wood, I use exclusive Tupelo, and it's a very blonde wood, and you end up with this color.
And that's just the wood.
Yeah, that's just wood there.
Yeah. Is everything done in Tupelo?
No, I've started using some butternut, and I'm really enjoying it. Well, you gave me that wonderful piece that I did the the doe and fawn with, and I've collected a few more, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm loving the butternut. I don't do my high detailed. I don't do every little hair and that kind of stuff, and you don't paint it. But it has such beautiful grain that it's been really kind of fun and exciting picking up the butternut and carving on it. And it carves really nice.
And how do you, that's clear coated in the end. So
Yes.
What's that finishing process? You remember?
Yeah, I just
Same
use it.
TK?
Nope.
base? No?
Nope. No, I do the deft, and then over the top of the deft, then I do the deft sanding sealer.
Spray?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what's the finish? Is it polyurethane?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
But I might play with that in the future too. I don't know. It's new to me. I've only done several pieces, so I'm just starting. I feel like a neophyte, but I'm loving it. So who cares?
Do you have a favorite source of buying Tupelo?
Yeah, but he's gone out of business. Kurt's Waterfell in Louisiana. You can go to Sugar Pine. I would go and look at the wood. I would not trust them. Even if you tell them you want competition quality. I'm looking for another source.
So you don't buy Heineke or any mail order sources. You're trying to actually see the wood before you buy it.
Yes. Now I have bought from when Kurt Waterfell was in business. I have bought for him because I trusted him. Last piece I bought was at the World Show, year before last. But he was going out of business. He was retiring, and couldn't blame him. He's in his 80s. He doesn't want to do that anymore. And I think his supplier was going to end up having his own business. And I don't know who that was. I couldn't get a name.
Are you having to glue up and laminate blocks?
Nope.
You're buying big enough blocks so you get one block for whatever.
I will draw the pattern to meet the size of wood that I have. Yeah, I don't laminate.
So let's talk about then that process of once the pattern is applied, are you bandsawing things out?
Yep.
Yourself?
Yes.
Okay. And then you use Fordhams to.
Yep. Then I'll go to my Fordham and do this. I hog off my wood with my Fordham. And I've got, these kind of bits.
Big bits.
Yes. This is the yellow, which is the fine. That's the green. That's a coarse. I think the red is even coarser. But I've taken off hide with the red. And I don't need that anymore.
And you do that. So let's take a look at your carvings, your workstation here.
Okay.
Because you have the Fordham hung up here. So you're doing everything in this space.
Yes.
There.
Yep. My Fordham is right here. I carve over my dust collector. Right here. I'm carving right here. Once I get down to where I've I'm not ready yet with my little calf there, but eventually I'll get down to fine. This is that Arbornet sandpaper, which I just love because I can clean it. And then I'll go to much smaller, yeah, like this. And these. I love these little guys. And I can change the grit on this. And probably 90-95% I'm using the Arbornet, which is.
And are you cutting those for the
Yes.
to form them around the sanding?
Yes.
Sanding
I
cylinders?
usually will cut multiple ones. You know, I'll cut them to size, and graduating, you know, anywhere from 60. Don't use that very much, but 180, 120, 180, 220, 400, 600. I've got 600.
You tend to stop at 600?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's only when I'm doing super fine. There it is. Yeah, that's the 600 grit. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even really go 600 on everything. Usually 220 or 400.
You have a micromotor system as well?
Yep. This is my Geschwin.
And
I've got,
is that a foundational piece of equipment for you?
yes. Yeah. This I bought myself when I sold a nice big piece. Before then, I had viewed an NSK, and it was good. In hindsight, I honestly don't know that I'd spend the extra on the Geschwin, but everybody said you had to have it. It was the Maserati as opposed to the Cadillac. Well, Cadillac's just fine for me. But I have it, and I've got the two hand pieces,
So
and that's what I do my detail in.
So you're roughing out with the Fordham and then using the
Yeah.
for that. And same spectrum of burrs and bits for coarse to fine, or is this all fine work?
By the time I get it down to where I'm using the Geschwin, it's much finer work.
Yeah.
This is a piece right here. I don't know if we can get it close enough. This is one of my favorite pieces. I don't know if we can get it close enough.
So it's a flame.
Yeah, but it's a
It's fine.
it leaves a real clean. It's a cutter.
Oh, it's a cutter. Yeah, it's a spiral. Yeah. It's a cutter. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not really spiral. It's straight.
Yes.
Flutes. I'll take pictures of that when we're done.
Yeah. Okay. I'll leave that out. Love that. It just comes off real clean. Then I'll go to my diamonds and rubies. I actually like the rubies. Not everybody does, but I happen to like them. And I'll use a lot of flames and footballs. Let's see. Anything from that size, which is pretty good size, all the way down to this size. And that's a diamond.
This is the detail work.
Yes.
Are you doing?
Yes.
So for hair or maybe feathers on birds, are you wood burning or are you just?
I rarely wood burn anymore. If I wood burn at all, it tends to be like around the face of a mammal where the hair is real fine around the muzzle of the face. I used to wood burn everything, and I don't anymore. I'll use these sticks, these ceramic sticks.
So you're using a disc to cut in and actually scribe curvy hairline kind of things.
And then when I want to go back and do individual little hairs, I'll use these little ceramic sticks.
Is that a disc? Let me see.
No.
So
you can shape
it's a pointy.
I pointed it.
It's a
yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
point.
They come with a flat end, which you can use too. This I call them the Googie coins because I think it was Bob Googie who developed them to begin with. I love these. Let's see if I can open this. Yeah, there we go. They're tapered sand cones. The thing that they use to hold these doesn't work very well. So what I ended up doing is I ended up taking a deck screw and just leaving the top part of the deck screw and then grind off the bottom part so it fit in the tool. And that holds the, it holds it in place. It
Then
doesn't come loose.
Then you wrap them?
No,
No.
you don't even have to wrap them. You just take them and you just screw them on.
Oh, screw them on. Where do you buy the sanding cones?
MDI has them. Wood Shop has them. I don't know if
Mail order.
yes, James and Company might have them. I've never ordered them from them. I've ordered these from MDI, and they come in several different sizes, from teeny tiny up to larger cones. I love these things. And they come in different grits, from fine to medium to coarse.
And you use them all?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They generate dust, obviously.
Yeah.
So you have a big hose.
Yes, I've got a big dust collector.
Is it exhausted to the outside, or is it?
No, it's got a bag that it collects in underneath here. It's a big, heavy. I'll turn it on so you can hear it.
Not very noisy, though.
Not too bad. But see, it's got a big bag back there. It collects the dust in.
So it's a.
They don't make them anymore.
Yeah. And you're happy with that?
I am, but it weighs a ton.
It's really noisy.
It weighs a ton.
Weighs a ton.
It's very heavy. Yeah.
How often do you have to empty?
Depends upon how often I'm carving. Probably good once a week.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you wear a mask?
I should.
You should, but don't. So.
I should, but no, this is pretty powerful. If I'm carving right over here, it just goes right down there. And then I've got my big unit up there that I'll turn on. So
you have a circulating air filtration system on the ceiling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And anything that floats up that I would be breathing in, that sucks it up.
So you got two.
Yeah. Yeah. I should still wear a mask.
Yeah. What's not visible in her studio is that there's, Judy, we have five or six other workstations for.
Yeah, there's 6 of them.
6 other stations for you carve with a group once a week. Is that right?
Yep. On Mondays.
On Mondays from 10 to 4. So they have, they're all carving and making dust, and they've got some other dust collectors set up. That particular dust collector, the club was donated one, and we sold it because we had no place for it. Not Judy, I don't think.
Janet?
Janet Clements.
Yeah.
It turns out that is a repurposed furnace blower motor. Was where the weight comes from. And that's why it's so quiet, because furnace motors are quiet. I found the source. The guy that made it was in the Midwest. I'm not sure. I mean, he still may make them, but it's a big motor, and it's heavy, it's bulky, and it has like a 6-inch hose, and that platform with an inlet that will draw the air in. I think there's probably a screen in it to avoid dropping little parts into it.
Yeah.
The big question for me was was it a HEPA filter? And no,
No.
it's the bag. It's a big dust collector bag that's collecting the dust, which means the finer particles are floating around, which is why I asked Judy about that air filtration system, which is on the ceiling. And it seems to be doing a good job. I'll mention, for those of you that don't know Abranet, I'll put that in the notes. That's a common popular brand of sanding paper that's durable and cleanable, right?
Yes, you just blow it out with the canned air.
Yeah. Judy, there was a question of, do you recommend buying your bits individually, or is there a set you'd recommend for a starter kit?
Oh, I would recommend individually. I would talk to people and find out what their favorite ones are. Yeah, I probably own 1,000 bits and I probably use 25 of them. You find out which ones work for you, but I wouldn't necessarily buy a set.
I'll reference you to two other things. One is that in the Frank Russell Fordham DVDs that are online, he has a section describing the bits that he uses. And he had a school in Maine, by the way. And he described the standard set of bits that he used at the school for carving those objects. And he shows them, describes them, and I have excerpted that list. Well, he also published it in one of several books. And I will circulate that list as a handout after this meeting. That's one person's opinion. The other is that if you look at the Rick Pass video on bird carving, he also has lots of burrs, bits and burrs. And he says, I only use this handful. It gets down to a relatively small number.
Yeah.
But the other is that in the club we have a tool library. The club tool library's purpose is to help you make good buying decisions. And so you can borrow, see what we have and borrow a set and see which ones you might be using for a particular project and get a sense and save you some money. And that's true for all kinds of tools, not just for the bits that go along with this. We'll switch gears just a little bit.
Okay.
How long does it take you within reason, because I realize you do a lot of other things maybe at the same time, but how long would it take you to carve a lion or what are your cats? Is this a 1 month, 1 year, 5 years?
Oh no, I can't go 5 years. That would, I know lots of artists do, but no, I couldn't do that. It depends. I did a full size bobcat one time, and he's sitting and he's about this big, and I made the mistake of counting every hour from the time that I started drawing to making the pattern to bandsawing it to hogging it off with the Fordham. I counted every hour, and I ended up selling it for a pretty good price at that point in time. I think it was like $4,250 at that point in time. That was pretty good. And then I divided the hours into and I thought, I'm not doing that anymore. I can make more money working at McDonald's. That probably took me 360 to 380 hours. If we're talking about that size.
What size things do you typically carve? They're not life size. They're scale models. Are they?
Oh yeah.
Third, quarters, 50%, or
yes, everywhere in from a third to 50%. Okay. Yeah, I did the Siberian tiger is about this big. So I think that's maybe less than a third.
Yeah. Is there a useful model of how much time goes into research and drawing and sketching compared to preparation before you even put a tool to it? Then how much time is carving and how much time is finishing? And
that's a good question.
What is a structure like?
Probably 10 to 15% is research, figuring out the pattern. Sometimes that's just drawing. Sometimes it's actually doing a little thumbnail sketch with clay. I did a life-size fox one time that's laying down, and I did a little tiny thumbnail sketch. No detail, just a thumbnail sketch of how I wanted. He's laying down, he's all curled up, and I just did a little clay thumbnail sketch. And then sometimes I get a little bit more detailed, like I have here, a little bit more detailed. And then I did one of a bobcat um, that I ended up casting in the class, and it was it was a small one of the full size one I did. Um,
So if 10 to 15% goes into the beginning part, how
Mhm.
much for carving and how much for painting, finishing?
Probably 45-50% is carving, and the rest is painting.
Yeah. And then how long, could you put a time span on that? Is it a few months? Is it a year? If you were within, how do you think about, how long does it take you? Or how long did it take you and how long does it take you now? You probably got faster as time goes on.
Yeah, but what I tend to do is I have more than one thing I'm working on at a time. If I get bored or tired or get a headache from carving, I'll go to painting another piece. So it's because there's multiple pieces going on at the same time. Um, I'm guessing it better not be more than a year.
Okay.
That would drive me nuts if it was more than a year. But sometimes it will be close to a year because I'm working on several other pieces at the same time.
So maybe an alternate way of thinking about this is how many pieces do you do a year?
Oh, boy, sometimes it's one or two.
Okay.
Sometimes it's been 4. I'm not
But it's
high
not 10
end.
or 20, right?
No,
right?
I am not a high end, fast producing because I don't do the same thing over and over and over again. I don't always do like a lot of bird carvers, the waterfowl carvers especially will do waterfowl. And even though there's a big difference between a mallard and a eider, um, there's still the skeletal structure is still similar. There's a big difference between a giraffe and a chipmunk. Um, so yeah, I'm not going into every piece with a real sense of knowing what I'm doing. I'm constantly referring to references and pictures and checking things out. And, God bless the internet. That's been such a boon because you can go on Pinterest. Let's just use that as an example, and you can write in there a Highland cow calf eye, and you'll get 1,000 pictures of a Highland cow calf eye, or nose, or ear, or even a hind end, which you can't find in most photography. That people aren't going to take the picture of the back end of a cow very often, but you'll find it out there on the internet.
So it's easy to be a carver like Judy. Just take a lot of drawing classes, a lot of sculpture classes, and a lot of color theory classes, and carving. By then, carving is easy, right? easier.
You never stop learning.
Yeah, easier. Judy, there was a question I missed from the previous discussion on the carving from Mike Chia about work holding. The question was, could you talk about work holding strategies that you use for various size carvings that you do? Do you hold them in your hand or you put them in a vise or how do you
Yes, both.
both?
Both. Yeah. I use I discovered totally by accident one time. I came in from working in the yard and had my gardening gloves on, and they're the kind that have the rubber textured surface. And I walked through my studio and went, "Oh, I see what the problem is," and picked up my piece to carve on it, and found that the gardening gloves with that texture on it made holding the piece a lot easier. But I also have vices that when I'm doing a bigger piece and I'm really hogging off wood and don't want to get my hands in the way, I'll use a vise.
Can we switch gears just a little bit about clay modeling?
Okay.
About what kind of clay, for people that have not made a clay model, sort of, how do you get started?
That's again something that I did at Clackamas Community College in the sculpture class. Is the first term that you take is something called plastics, which is, I thought that was a misnomer, but it's anything that you use that starts off uh, fluid and malleable. So even plaster was considered plastic. And we started working with the plasticine, which is you can get it anywhere. You can get it at Michael's and Hobby Lobby and order it online. Generally, it starts. There's like 4 hardnesses: 1, 2, 3, and 4. One being kindergarten quality, really malleable and hard to keep a shape, all the way up to 4, which is one that you literally have to carve. I prefer the 3, 2, somewhere in there. It's made up of kind of equal parts. Everybody has their own recipe, but it's powdered clay, wax, and a petroleum product. And that's what I use is the plasticine clay. And to work it, you can heat it. You can put it like in a bucket and then put a heat lamp over the top of it. That will keep it heated and warm. I use a little bit of Vaseline. I put Vaseline on my hands and work it into it, and that makes it a little bit more malleable.
Does it harden?
No, no. The one that I'm doing, the clay that I used on my little calf here, can you see him? I'm going to lift him up. Is probably 25 years old. And it's still very easily maneuvered. So no, you do need to kind of keep it in a plastic sack, but that's mostly just to keep it clean. It will get dust, but you can also wash it.
Okay. So you have the carving in process off of this clay model.
What I did was I did the clay model. I kind of worked out the pose that I wanted. And then I took pictures of it. Straight on, sideways, and top view. You have to sort of guess at the distance. I measured out, say, 10 inches, took a picture. Then I measured up 10 inches and tried to take a picture. But once you get the profile, then I increased the size until it fit the piece of wood. Then when I did that, then I drew the pattern onto a graph paper. And when you do that, then you just draw straight up and straight up. And then you fit the top view to match that space. I know there's probably mathematical formulas you can do, but that's not my area of expertise. Visually, I could do it. Mathematically, not so much.
Is your end template a piece of plastic template, or is it how do you get from the pattern onto the wood?
I just use like transfer paper,
and just
like that. And then I just put the paper on the wood, draw it out, and then when I bandsaw it, I always give myself. I never cut on the line. Always give yourself a little extra.
How much is a little?
Oh, 1/8 of an inch.
1/8 of an inch.
Mm-hmm. I'd rather take off more than put on more.
You ever use filler or glues?
Oh, I have to. My bandsaw is not the best bandsaw in the world. On this little one here, I ended up, well, I used some in here because I put brass rods up in his tail to give it some extra strength. But where is it? Oh, right here. When I was bandsawing this out, I got in a place where I wasn't supposed to be with the bandsaw. So I had to put, there's all kinds of different products. There's Mendol, there's plastic wood. I kind of like this. Quick wood, but it doesn't work if you burn. The Mendol is an actual wood product, and it will burn. But this details just fine. So
will not hold the detail?
This will hold a detail. Doesn't burn.
Oh, it doesn't? Oh.
No, when you go to burn it, it just
it
crumbles.
will not wood burn.
It will not wood burn, yeah. But this, Mendol, that will burn. And if it dries out, I think you just add a little acetone to it.
Is that an art supply or is
No,
a commercial product?
You will find this at on MDI, James and Company. And there's a lot of people that love that. As a matter of fact, more people love that than they do the quickwood. Yeah. I'm just kind of a odd man out on that one.
What do you use for armature?
On this, I've got in the legs here. I've got brass rods, and I did a high density foam. It's only maybe about that big around, and then I cover that with duct tape because I don't want to pick up any of the foam into the clay. And then just, matter of fact, you can. I ended up moving it a little bit. You can kind of see a little bit of the tape right there. But you have to have something. I've got this holding it up too. The doweling is holding it up too. But you still need something to form the legs around.
The analogous question for clay is how do you learn to, how do new people learn how to draw?
Take classes. Same as painting. When you take a painting class, you'll learn color theory, which is monumentally important. I can't stress that enough. A guy by the name of Keith Mueller is absolutely the.
Would you say his name again?
I would say he has a PhD in color theory, and it's very complicated, but he just does a fabulous job of explaining color and demonstrating it. He's a really quality carver and a marvelous painter.
What's his name again?
Keith Mueller.
Keith Mueller. And he has a book or a video or
he both? Has, yes, both. Yeah. I think I have some of his stuff right up here. Keith Mueller. Yeah, here's his name. And this is the kind of things that he'll do. And he's excellent on color theory.
So this is a 2019 article found on the web. It looks like.
Probably.
Yeah.
But he does, if you can become friends with him on Facebook, he periodically will put out things like that on Facebook, a whole article on Facebook.
And do you use any hand tools?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Everything is done by power.
Yes, I did. When I first started, everything was by hand.
What was the first power tool you had?
It was a little old Dremel.
A little Dremel with a big shaft, or was it
small? The small little handheld pencil shape. Yeah.
Okay.
And I went through about 4 or 5 of those and went, this isn't going to work.
But it got you started.
It did. It did. And for a very low startup fee. Yep.
Yeah.
I think I still have it tucked away in one of my drawers.
What was the next one? What did you graduate to?
I went to the NSK.
To the NSK,
Mhm.
not the Fordham. You went to a micro.
Oh no, I've had this Fordham since the get-go. This is 35 years old. I've had this one forever.
So it is foundational.
Oh yes.
For roughing out and
yes,
removing a lot of material.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about detailed work. No, I had that. I think that was my first purchase.
Do you wear a glove?
Yes, I wear. Don't laugh. I wear gardening gloves.
Gardening gloves, so they don't get snagged.
Well, not only that, there's a grip to them.
Yeah.
I don't have very big, strong hands. And so when I'm hanging on like this, I can't get a wide grip. But if I have this rubberized stuff, it helps hold on to it. And I don't, my left hand doesn't get so tired.
Do you wear them on both hands?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you ever had any accidents?
Oh, yes.
What kind?
Oh, yeah. I haven't taken it down to the bone, but I've definitely, I'll show you the piece right here.
So the question is, how can people be safe? Based on your experience, what's good practice for being safe? Besides good dust
gloves.
management.
Good gloves. And don't get a tool that you have no business getting. I have no business getting something that's that coarse. I'm not strong enough. You know, it was Jerry Simchuk that said, oh, you have to get the red one. Well, his hands are twice as big as mine. So he can get it, and he's stronger. He's a guy, big, strong. I'm not that strong. So it might take me longer with this, but I don't hurt myself.
Yeah. Do you ever get snagged with jewelry or clothing?
Clothing, yes.
Are you more careful now?
Yes. Yes. I try to wear something that protects me, that holds the clothing, my shirts in.
Are you wearing a leather apron or anything?
Just
clothing. Right?
Yeah. But I have a tendency when I'm working, I collapse on myself. I'll start like this, and the next thing I know, I'm like this. And when I get like that, and I'm carving out here, and I'm real close, it's like that's when I grab something and end up having to replace a.
Yeah. Do you break the shaft?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You keep spares.
Yes. Oh yes. I have multiple ones down in that drawer right there. Not as many as I used to.
Yeah.
Just because I've learned the hard way that, just like using my bandsaw, I've learned that when I'm bandsawing, I can't bull my way through it. I have to go a little ways, back up, go a little ways, back up, go a little ways back. You know, I might be going 1/8 of an inch each time. And it might take me a month of Sundays to get there, but I get there without breaking a blade. So, yeah.
Have you ever had to go to emergency?
Nope.
Any stitches?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
So you're in.
Yes. Yes. I've known people who've had to go to emergencies and get stitches and yeah. No, I have not had to do that, but I've certainly taken off some hide to where it took a month.
Leslie Cantor is on our board of directors is a safety. She's our safety director. And so we're trying to, because safety is always, these accidents happen, they happen. And so being aware and trying to minimize the number of them and the severity of them is really what all this is about, particularly with power carving things, and particularly with figuring out strategies for good dust management. Because your lungs, some of this fine particles.
Oh, yes.
If you didn't have that ceiling circulation fan, chances are you'd be breathing fine particles that will be in your lungs forever. And so,
Well, that's what Will Hayden died from, was pulmonary fibrosis.
Yeah.
And even Lloyd Schultz, Floyd Schultz, has it,
mm,
and he has to be careful. It was from not wearing a mask.
yeah. Do you have any lung issues that you know of?
I have asthma, but that's family
Unrelated to
I,
the carving.
that I know of.
Yeah.
But
You would
take
recommend a
classes.
drawing on the right side of the brain to a young.
Oh yeah,
Is that a good text?
absolutely.
As long as you do
And
the
you can
work.
go back to when I started teaching my students to draw. I started out with just shapes, like my kindergarten, first, second grade. They're a little too young to comprehend form, but they could figure out shapes, which is basically circles, ovals, rectangles, triangles, squares, and you just put them together. And one of the things that we used to have a lot of fun with is I would start putting shapes up on um, felt, and I put a big round shape, and then I put a big oval shape. Then I put 4 little square shapes, and then I put a triangle. And by the time I got to the triangle, they all knew it was going to be an elephant. So I broke it down into shapes. Well, it's the same way with drawing. You start off with the shape first, then you refine it and go to then as the students got a little older, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, then we'd shade it and add cast a shadow on the tabletop, so to speak. Then we had form. Then we went from that to sculpting. You'd have a form which was not a circle; it was a ball. You know, but it's simple. It's simple. Anybody can draw. They might not be great at it, but they can draw. They can break it down into shapes and forms. But I would take classes, and even if it's online class.
Art and sculpture classes.
Yeah. You'll learn something from every one of them.
Yeah.
Even if you learn what not to do.
Yeah.
I've had teachers where I've taken, that first wood sculpting class, I learned what not to do.
Yeah. So wood burning is an important process for bird carving.
Oh, yes.
Right. You sell the wood burner?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I have multiple wood burners. And I still do some burning. But I found that with the ceramic sticks and stuff like that.
For someone that doesn't have one, what would you recommend buying?
Well, I have a detail master, but that's not a coal wood, razor tip.
So the more popular brands that are there.
You're probably going to find more different tips that you can use with the coal wood. They have adapters now, but they don't always work as good.
Yeah.
But I started off with Detail Master, so I have one here and I have one in La Pine. And I think I even have one extra in case somebody comes to class and doesn't have one. But yeah. I just don't burn as much as I used to. Like I said, I used to burn everything.
Here's a cover of, so this is from Breakthrough Magazine. The notion of subscribing to a taxidermy magazine I thought was fascinating. And you hit this website, and I'll send a link to this on the notes and the handouts. Taxidermists mount everything. They had an iguana on one of the cover articles, and obviously they do birds and mammals. So the level of artistry that goes into that is really quite spectacular. Judy, I'm going to not use any more videos. I'm just going to ask you what we're wrapping up now, but it's a question about this major show called Ward World. Could you describe Ward World and put it in context a bit, and then maybe how it might fit in with the Columbia Flyway and other kind of regional shows?
It's almost exclusively birds. There's a small section of some fish. They opened it up just when COVID hit. They opened it up to some mammals. We're sort of the third world country in the show. Uh, but it's if you ever get a chance, it's in Maryland. If you ever get a chance, go and see it because the artistry is out of this world. And there's carvers from carvers aren't even the right word. There's sculptors from all over the world, and it's just incredible. It was always my dream to go. I've gone. I probably will not go back because it really is not a mammal show at all. It was a very small section, and we were back in the back room where nobody went. But the birds were just unbelievable.
So it is considered the premier
Yes,
carving show in the
it's
world.
called the Ward World.
Yeah.
And so they bring artists from all over the world.
And so those prize winners there become famous and
Oh, yes,
instructors and carry on the art, right?
yes. And their artwork goes for tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And are there mammal-oriented shows that you attend? Are there any around?
Um, I used to go to the Audubon. It's a juried show. You have to jury to get in. I used to go to it. Um, that's the only one I can think of that's exclusively for um, animals, but it again is the Audubon show, so that's a lot of birds.
Okay. And the Columbia Flyway show has been on for quite a long time.
Yeah,
It goes
yeah.
back to the Forestry Center.
No, I don't know. I don't think they were at the Forestry Center. They were a very small show, and they were in like motel dining rooms and stuff like that. Then they moved to the Vancouver Waterworks, and now they're up in Astoria. It was Don Bear who first opened it up to something besides birds and fish. He opened it up to mammals, and it has had in the past fairly significant amount of mammals. I'd sure like to see more mammal carvers compete there, but it is a competition.
Yeah. And you said you had some carvers coming over without naming names. What are the carvers that you hang out with carving
Birds,
on Mondays? Oh,
birds.
so one of them is it carves feathers a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Randy Martin carves beautiful, beautiful feathers.
so these are so realistic you can hardly tell the difference sometimes.
Oh yeah,
They're carved and wood burned and painted.
yeah.
Yeah,
They're just beautiful.
yeah. One of them is carving a seal, I think you said.
Oh yeah, my friend Cheryl Ayers. She's carving a seal, and Sherry Klein is working on uh, jaguar. I'm working on the little Highland cow calf, and I just cut out a elk. Um,
You just cut on an elk.
cut out an elk, a
Huh?
head and antlers of an elk.
Okay.
And my friend Hannah, these are the people that come on Monday. Um, Moyles, she's working on, I think she's working on a waterfowl. She's working on a duck.
Okay.
And Dan Wendling, he comes on Mondays too. He's mostly a bird carver, but he's starting to branch out into some mammals. Might be my influence. It might be my fault.
Could you just talk a bit about carving habitats? In the
Oh,
in the photo galleries that I showed at the very beginning, those very exotic. How many of those are carved out of wood and painted, and how many are other materials? What are the rules for habitats?
you can use, we used to follow the IWCA rules, which meant that you could only use wood or metal for like support and stuff like that. Um, they're kind of getting away from that, like the cactus that the female um, falcon was on. That's almost all wood, but the blooming flower, I used a product called Duralar, which is specifically made for things like um, the petals. I love doing habitat. The habitat would be a whole nother series. I have almost as much fun, maybe more fun, on doing the habitats because I'm a little bit more free. You still have to be accurate, but you don't have to count feathers.
Yeah. You mentioned Jerry Simchuk,
Yes,
and he is a Spokane-based bird carver. Is that right?
yes. He does mammals too now and again. Yes. And he came to my place, came to my studio for like 10 years in a row and gave lessons. We did 6 days of carving or getting a carving started on a bird. Then we do like 4 or 5 days of a habitat. And he'd come and he'd do 6 days of the bird. Then we'd skip for 3 months and he'd come back and we'd do 4 or 5 days of a habitat. And then we'd skip. No, wait, we back up, back up. He'd come back and we'd do 4 or 5 days of painting. Then we'd skip another couple of months and he'd come back and we'd do the habitat for 3 or 4 days. And he did that for about 10 years. Learned a lot. And he puts out beautiful books. His books are extremely well done. They're even really well done as far as color theory and color mixing and stuff like that. If you're into birds, I would highly recommend getting a couple of his books. They're really well done.
Is he still teaching?
I think he's teaching, but he's teaching like one-on-one. People come to him.
There's a Lebanon, Oregon company called Sugar Pine. They used to be really big and major, and they still exist. Is that a reasonable way to get started with a bird or with a mammal, or is it too, what do you think?
They're basically a supply company. They do mostly taxidermy. That's where they started. So probably 7/8 of their business is taxidermy. They have a small section, it's growing, of supplies for paints and paintbrushes and bits and those kind of supplies for carving, but it's not their main focus. But they also have in the back room, they have their wood.
Will they sell roughouts for mammals or birds?
I don't think so, but they do sell books.
Okay.
They do sell books that have patterns.
Okay. I'm going to remove you from the spotlight and we'll see the hardy folks that are still here to see if there's any questions before we wrap it up.
Yeah, it's my bedtime.
To bed. Yeah. So it's really a thrill. Judy, you go to a lot of shows. You were in Coastal Carvers in Lincoln City. It seems like every time I've been there, you've been there to that
Yeah,
show. You're at the Columbia Flyway, so you'll always have something in the Columbia Flyway show in September.
yep.
Um, so that's a great chance to meet you personally. And when you were in Coastal Carvers in January, you had the heifer, right? You were starting, is that right?
Yeah, I was working on the clay then.
You were just getting started.
Yep,
Recall, I saw the brass armatures and you were modeling the clay.
yep,
And those shows are not so busy that you don't have time to talk. So it's a
right.
great chance to do one-on-one. Okay, well, Judy, thank you for your generosity, for your time, for putting up with my tech technology realities of getting through this. But I think it's a good documentary, and I think it'll be a great piece of the archive for um, the future and for the present.
Yeah, everybody comes up with any questions, just get a hold of me and I'll make up an answer.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'll have a handout with all the stuff that I can, answering the questions that I would have wanted answered if I were on the other side of the screen. So we'll do my best. And otherwise, you're on your own. You got to rewatch the videos. We'll post this Zoom recording, and I'll also record the corrected version of the PowerPoint. So for anybody that wants to rewatch the whole thing, that's probably the more efficient way to see it in the next time around. Okay, good night all. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.
Go carve some mammals.
Go to a show.
Yes.
Go to a show. Take a class. Okay, here we go. You subscribe to magazines?
Oh, yeah.
What do you subscribe to?
One of the ones that I really like is called Breakthrough. Have you heard of it?
Breakthrough?
Breakthrough. It's a taxidermy magazine.
How do you spell it? I'm sorry.
Breakthrough. It's just one word, breakthrough. I used to do wildfowl carving, but I've made up my mind I'm going to finish the few birds that I've got left, and that's it. I'm not doing any more birds. So there. So I'm not getting that one anymore. Used to get Western art. I get chip chats.
You like chip chats?
Yeah. Depends. Some of the issues are good. Some, like this last one that I got nothing out of it. Absolutely nothing out of it.
And who were the other influencers in those early days?
But another fellow by the name of Will Hayden. I don't know if you heard his name or not. Very influential. I call Andy Andy was my kind and gentle mentor. Will was my drill sergeant mentor. Yes, he just followed me around with a whip. But it was very encouraging. As a matter of fact, I have his picture right there, and he stares at me when I'm sitting here carving. So those two men, excuse me, were probably the two that really were instrumental to begin with. Then I started taking lessons. I started taking classes. Unfortunately, the only ones that I could really find that taught real fine artwork with the wood were bird carvers, which was never my great love. Mammals were always my great love. But I started taking classes at Andy Anderson's insistence with a fella named Ernie Mulemat. And he was a high-end, top-end, world-class sculptor who was just a sweetheart. And then along the way, I got introduced to other teachers. Jerry Simchuk came into my life, and I ended up hosting classes here with him for well over 10 years. So he was monumental. Also, only birds. Then, through a friend of mine, Sherry Klein, I got introduced to Desiree Haney. And she's a mammal carver. And that's when I was a happy camper, getting to do my mammals.
Can you put Ward World in a context for people?
How can I compare it? It's.
Well, here's the question, really: Ward World and Columbia Flyway.
Well, actually,
and the other equivalents, the Columbia Flyway around the country,
and the Pacific, down in yes, they're brother sister. The Ward brings people from all over the world. It is the epitome. It's the high end. And it was, I'm so fortunate that I got a chance to go. It was my dream to get to go.
And you went there 2 years ago?
2 years ago. Mm-hmm. and it can take your breath away.
And it's a museum. That's
Well, actually, the museum that's a whole nother story.
so they sponsor the museum sponsors Ward World Show. Is that the
Uh,
context for it?
It was kind of originally, but the museum was on the campus of the college there. And the college has now sort of kicked us out, taken over this wonderful museum. I'll get political if I start to talk about that, and we don't want to do that. It was the Ward brothers. It was two brothers who did waterfowl, and they're the ones that started this whole competition. Now it's unbelievably beautiful, gorgeous birds.
Is it all birds?
They did open it up to fish. There's some fish, and this 2 years ago when I went, they had some mammals, but we were we were the third world country back there. They weren't very many, and they weren't given any.
Is there a better venue for mammal carvers competition?
I would say not carving shows necessarily. I would get more involved with art groups. Like there's the Clackamas County Art Alliance that's in this area, and I'm seriously thinking of pulling back from some of the carving shows, specific carving shows, and getting more involved in art shows. Just because the Columbia Flyway has a mammal division, but it's also, the
Let's
third
paint
cousin.
another picture, though. Your involvement was at the Forestry Center with the bird show.
Yes.
And today we have Feather and Quill, which produces the Columbia Flyway show. That's a span of about 30 years or so.
Uh-huh.
What happened in between? How does that evolve over time? And what is the role of Feather and Quill? People generally don't know what that is.
Well, it's kind of changed over the decades. The Western wood carvers, we carved everything. That was not strictly birds. The Feather and Quill has always been pretty much exclusively birds. To begin with, they had their show. It was a small show. It wasn't a big show. Still attracted some really phenomenal artists, but it has grown now to where that seems to be the sole focus of the club is the show. They used to have meetings when Don Bear was in charge. We would go to meetings at his place, and then afterwards we would have demonstrations, and then he had carving stations set up where everybody could carve whatever they were working on at the time. Now it seems to be just exclusively the show, which is a little bit of a disappointment. I would like to go back a little bit to where we had demonstrations and people sharing their knowledge, and that's done at the show, but it's not the same. But we put on a heck of a good show. So
And COVID put a crimp on everybody.
On everybody. Yeah.
And what role did Don Bear play in general?
He was the president. He was one of the founding fathers. He and Will Hayden were kind of the founding fathers of the Columbia Flyway. And Byrne and Joanne Watson, very instrumental in starting the group.